What is the anchoring effect in a negotiation, and how might it impact a negotiation strategy?
That's a very interesting subject. I love the anchoring effect because there's so much psychology in it. How about I show you also something on this quick little exercise? If Elliot, if you want to just think for a moment, just for yourself, if you believe that Uzbekistan has more or less than 4 million people, just think for yourself. Do you think Uzbekistan has more or less than 4 million people? And for everyone watching this now as well, of course, now write down how many people you think Uzbekistan has. How many inhabitants?
Okay.
Okay. So when I do that in classes of over 100 people, and then I have everyone raise their hand of how many is a bit unfair now. Only you playing with me here live. I ask people, how many did you have? How many had between 1 and 4 million? And there's about 30% raising their hand. And then I ask how many between 5 and 10 million. And there's another 30% raising their hand. And then it gets less and less as I go up. There's about maybe another 20% that goes up to 15 million, but then it pretty much dies out after that. And the real population of Uzbekistan is 30 million people. And it's very interesting because it clearly shows how the majority of people always circle around the 4 million that we had in the first question. So most people will guess between 1 and 4 or 5 to 8 or to 10. And it's not because we don't know any better, yes, but also mainly because initially that number of more or less than 4 million anchored us to thinking it was around 4. Do you want to tell us what you had, Albert, or would you rather not?
It was really interesting because when you said 4 million, when I was writing it down, I thought, is it between 1 to 4, just over 4? And I thought, oh no, this is a. So I just wrote 18 million just to be contrarian.
18.
Yeah,
that's very close.
But it happened to me immediately. 4 million was in my mind. I thought, do I think it's less or a little bit more? And I almost, hovered around the sort of 5 or 7 million.
4, yeah. So that's the anchoring effect. And the fascinating thing around it is there's been so many studies that prove again and again how sneaky this number game is. They've run a study at MIT where they ask students to pull out their social security card and write down the last 2 digits of their social security number, so complete random number. And then they put that away, and the professor started an auction. So he was auctioning out random things, a bottle of wine and a bar of chocolate. And then after it was all said and done, they compared the amount of money the students had bid on these items to the social security number they had. And they found out that the people with the highest social security number bid an average of 150 to, I believe, 170% more on these random things that were auctioned out.
That's incredible.
So it's spooky. It's almost scary to think about it. But if you know it as a negotiator, I find it very helpful to use anchoring if you start a negotiation. And the more unsure it is what price level we're talking about, the more powerful that anchoring effect is. If it's pretty clear where we're going to end up, there's not so much power in anchoring. But if you're in an area where it's not so clear cut, then I would recommend to always go first and put out the first number. Of course, with the warning that you can only do that if you have enough information about it. So only do it if you're not running a risk of losing a whole lot of money because it's not your field and you haven't done your research, you're not an expert, and you cannot really assess what you're doing. I just read on I think New York Times the other day that the Beatles lost $100 million because of that effect when the manager of the Beatles was called up by the people who started the merchandise for the Beatlemania. And they were asking him to come in and negotiate the royalty fees that the Beatles were going to get. So the manager goes in, and he had just earlier negotiated a deal for LP for the old CDs, Elliot help, Langspielplatte in German, and he got 7%, and he was super proud. He was like, "This was the best deal ever." So he walks into that deal for the merchandise, and he says to So he says to the negotiation partner, but I'm not going to take anything less than 10%. He says, you've got a deal, sir. By the time that he found out that the normal royalty fee for merchandise was between 30 and 40%, they reportedly had lost about $100 million until they renegotiated to 35% of it.
That's an expensive lesson.
That's the warning. If you don't have enough information, then really do not trust the anchoring effect. Do not go first, but make sure you do use it if you do have enough information and you can use it to your advantage, because it is quite powerful.